Hello everybody, good evening, I'm Cosmic Claire and welcome to another one of my evening video blogs in which I talk about things from a different point of view from the main world out there. And yes, it's definitely a different point of view this evening for what I'm going to be talking about. But first, just let's have some context. It's very cold and still plenty of snow on the ground here in Headingley, and I imagine everybody's kind of staying at home as much as possible with these conditions. I certainly don't hear many cars going past, and I think we do all kind of need a little bit of downtime, and this is kind of the best time of year, as good a time of the year as any, to have some downtime, some quiet reflection away from the hustle and bustle and busyness of the world, if you can possibly get it. Obviously it's still going on out there and we're all still participating in it, but if you can get a little bit of space away from it to reflect, I think it certainly repays itself. Now, I listened to a really excellent MP3 download podcast from the excellent Red Ice Radio, which I will put a link to at the bottom of this underneath on YouTube. And it's the first one I've listened to this year, since Rupert Sheldrake around about the new year, because I've been spending my available time reading a couple of excellent books, where you'll kind of get the context from my previous talks about read the A.N. Wilson C.S. Lewis biography, and I've nearly finished the Tolkien in the First World War, which has kind of informed a lot of my blog talks this year. But they're all in the same kind of angle, really, or at least I should say they all seem to have same kind of view, which is kind of summarized very well by this podcast from Henrik Palmgren and Red Ice Radio, with a chap called Paul Levy, and it's about the Wetiko, as it's called. Hang on, just listen to it. Yes, Dispelling Wetiko, Breaking the Curse of Evil. Now, what's all that about? What on earth is Wetiko? Well, Wetiko is the name that certain American Indian cultures give to the collective dreaming of insanity that the world is now kind of deeply embedded in. I think they saw it when they saw it 100 years or more ago, 150 years ago, when the white men started really hammering them. But this is not just evident in the places where colonialism is taking place anymore these days. It is everywhere. If you think about the dominant world obsessions, which seem to, at a mass level, involve war, killing of civilians, financial exploitation, genetic modification of food that becomes poisonous, and all this kind of stuff. I challenge anybody to really argue the point that there is a collective insanity. Now, you could say, oh, well, it's just one or two things that aren't working out, but they all kind of seem to go together. And I think the concern is very much about where it's going and where it will end. Now, Paul Levy had a... it was Paul Levy, wasn't it? Yes, he... we used to have a weather forecaster around here called Paul Levy. That's why I did a double take. No, he was a TV presenter, North TV presenter. Anyway, what he was saying was that we this insanity that we're all enmeshed in and embedded in is actually the means for the collective enlightenment of humanity. It's kind of what I've been talking about the last few days, actually. So it's fascinating to hear this podcast, to somebody talking about it in different ways, and very erudite as well he was. It's a kind of Jungian collective mind thing as well, because what it's doing is it's causing immense pain and separation, and it's kind of like waking up to find that your house is on fire. But it's better to wake up and either try and douse the flames or get out, or call your neighbours or call the fire brigade or whatever, than it is to suffocate and die and be burnt up in the house. So we're in that kind of very difficult position at the moment. And I'm very, very interested in what Paul Levy has to say about how we deal with this, because it's about, we are so deeply enmeshed in it that we can even think that we're trying to cure it when we're actually making it worse by becoming part of it, engaging in the same kind of paradigm games. I think one of the things that is very much a kind of hidden agenda at the moment is that the powers that be, the governments, the repressive regimes, the institutional elites, very much want to provoke people to violence, as we saw in the summer riots, I think about 18 months ago, wasn't it, late 2011, so that they have an excuse to crack down. And so this whole thing gets just more and more kind of tangled, like a ball of string where you're just pulling it and pulling it and pulling it and pulling it tighter, and it's just getting more and more locked up. And I do not favour the Alexandrian way of solving this problem, which those of a classical interest will know that Alexander, known as the Great, who lived about 350 BC, thereabouts, to 320 or something, when he was a young man, he I think he was already on his path to conquest, but he came across this place called in Gordia, called Gordia, I believe it was, and there was a giant knot of rope there, which was all plaited and twisted and everything, and it was said that the man who undid this knot would rule the world. So Alexander, in his typical brash fashion, took out his sword and slashed it open and pulled all the ropes apart. Well, this is kind of the way that the people who are deeply embedded in the Wetico, the people in the military-industrial complex and so forth, this is how they are trying to solve it. They say, oh look, terrorists, let's make war on them. Let's not even get into the whole false flag scenario. Even if that wasn't the case, what kind of insanity is it to spend 10 years and billions of pounds and dollars and hundreds of lives and attacking impoverished villages in rocky mountain places where they're barely clinging on to life? I mean, it's kind of insanity. But if these people really do believe what they're doing, and I believe our beloved Prince Harry is out there with them, shooting at poor collateral damage with his machine gun from helicopters. Anyway, enough of that. you don't make peace by making war on civilians, and this is symptomatic of the Alexander cut the Gordian knot technique apart, because you just tear society apart all the more. And what we need to do is actually get at untying that knot, untying it gently, and finding a way of doing it without causing harm and without tearing apart the structure of our world. I was very, very interested, as I say, in what Paul Levy had to say about this, because he's absolutely spot on, I believe, in talking about how this stuff is a projection of our shadow, and we have to look at our own reactions to things which we find difficult, so that we don't just strike back in the same frame as the things that we disapprove of. Because if we just say, oh, we're right, then people on the other side, they're saying, oh, we're right. It's like these kind of religious fundamentalists who can't even see that somebody else has a different point of view and a different tradition, and that they don't mean any harm. And so you actually create the harm that you are trying to stop. You become the thing that you are opposed to, and it's a hall of mirrors. So it's really important to step back from it and consider our own responses to these things. And it's not about giving in to the other person, because they're probably projecting just as much. But in stepping back and detaching from the paradigm, from the game that we're stuck into, and try to find a better way in our response, a new paradigm, so that we can unravel the knot rather than try to slash it open. Because the consciousness field that we are part of, I mean, we have to, well, I believe we have to see that this is a really, really important part of this, because this whole madness thing happens because the whole society is built on conceptions of opposition, and we need to see that we are all part of that same consciousness field, and we can't continue shredding it apart and making it worse for everybody. So it's a matter of standing back, looking at our own violence, at our own fear, and just doing little bits at first, because it can be quite scary. We have very well structured lives, very well programmed lives by the system, and we participate and engage in this so that we can't kind of just smash it. We have to kind of gently ease out of it. And I always find myself thinking when I'm doing these videos, I think, oh, when I started doing it, I thought, I was going to be talking about, like conspiracy theories and stuff like that. But there are other people doing a lot more of that, and they're much more well informed about that. And some of that is a bit debatable, and it's I found that it's more kind of where I'm coming from, to try and look at the underlying mass psychology of what is going on here, because I've been interested in the psychology of Carl Jung for many decades now, and I think that is kind of the underlying model of what we're working with, that we are all, to coin a phrase we keep hearing from the politicians, we are all in this together, but I don't think they realise quite how much. It's not about the money that they're, trying to exploit and pretend that, blah blah blah. It's about a world. It's about a field of cosmic consciousness that we are all part of, and the madness is thinking it's all separate. Madness is thinking that we are not part of some unified being, that it's all kind of random and basically winner takes all and force majeure rules, etc., etc. But if that's the case, then the madness rules, and the madness will have it forever, and it will just get worse. There needs to be some resolution to it if we're not to destroy ourselves and the planet. And that resolution is to become aware of the madness, become aware. It's not too hard these days, because there is so much pain. It's not hard to see that pain and say, yeah, this is mad, actually. This is mad. And if I continue in the same way as I've always participated in it, then it will continue. And believe me, I participated in it as much as anybody. But I'll talk about that some other time. To paraphrase a popular catchphrase, step away from the madness. That's where I'm at with it tonight, folks. Just to say to anybody out there who thinks it is all mad, yeah, I'm with you, folks, and let's all just kind of step back and try to find a peaceful way out of this. And we have to look within and find our own pathways, and not engage with the madness and the violence and the fear, but try to find some compassionate resolution and see ourselves in other people, and realise that they can get trapped. And even though there are really evil people out there, that they're the ones who are most trapped of all. Now that's a really difficult one to get your head around, isn't it? It doesn't mean giving in to them, but it means being determined about your different view to relax the world, to find a way out, and gently untie this Gordian knot. So we can all remain one continuous ball of string, rather than a fragmented and shattered and uncut load of fragments. So we are all part of one another. I'll leave it there, and that's what my parting words say, for those who haven't heard me say it before. In Lakesh means I am another one of you. We are all eyes of the same consciousness. So thank you for watching. See you another time. In Lakesh. But first, just let's have some context. It's very cold, and still plenty of snow on the ground here in Headingley, and I imagine everybody's kind of staying at home as much as possible with these conditions. I certainly don't hear many cars going past, and I think we do the excellent Red Ice Radio, which I will put a link to at the bottom of this underneath on YouTube. And it's the first one I've listened to this year, since Rupert Sheldrake, around about the new year, because I've been spending my available time reading a couple of excellent books. Hello everybody, good evening, I'm Cosmic Claire, and welcome to another one of my evening video blogs, in which I talk about things from a different point of view from the main world out there. And yes, it's definitely a different point of view this evening for what I'm going to be talking about. Can get a little bit of space away from it to reflect. I think it certainly repays itself. Now, I listened to a really excellent MP3 download podcast from who all kind of need a little bit of downtime. And this is kind of the best time of year, as good a time of the year as any, to have some downtime, some quiet reflection away from the hustle and bustle and busyness of the world, if you can possibly get it. Obviously it's still going on out there and we're all still participating in it, but if you